Hello everyone, and welcome to my YouTube channel. In today's video, I would like to touch upon the topic of Ishmael. More specifically, I would like to talk about his balanced situation, since there are many people who don't understand what actually went wrong with Ishmael, and blindly say that Ishmael got nerfed, but are unable to tell you further details about it. In this video, I will be debunking the myths surrounding Ishmael, and clarifying facts about Ishmael's poor situation in the meta. Myth: Ishmael's ancient nerf killed his viability. Facts: in all history of hero wars, Ishmael has been nerfed only once. His nerf took place in early 2017, or more specifically, on 9th of February of that year. Nexters in that patch nerfed Ishmael's ultimate ability by slightly reducing the attack speed it provided and slightly compensating it with tiny critical hit chance increase. Furthermore, they drastically nerfed Ishmael's vampirism on his blue skill, reducing the maximum vampirism stat it provided from 125% to 60%. It was definitely a very significant nerf, but this didn't kill Ishmael's viability at all. All this nerf did was it brought Ishmael back to Earth, and he downgraded from being the god of this game to just a superhuman. This superhuman, though, still dominated the game. Ishmael remained to be extremely popular for his extraordinary effectiveness throughout the entirety of the year 2017 and most of the year 2018. Many people throughout this period of time kept begging Nexters to nerf Ishmael, but for the most part, most of those people were noobs that refused to understand that Ishmael could still be actually defeated easily by other heroes, most notably, Lars and Krista, who were much more centralizing than Ishmael was. After that, some of the veterans kept using him at least until they got a fine replacement for him. It was only in 2019 that his hype died almost completely and Ishmael became a sore subject to touch upon for both sides, the player base and Nexters. Now you might be wondering, why did Ishmael's viability die only this late into the game? Throughout the year of 2018, which is much later than the date of Ishmael's only nerf, well, two huge things happened throughout the year of 2018. Girl City update, and several ongoing character reworks and buffs. What do both things have in common, you ask? Both things overpowered tanks beyond Ishmael's increased capability to deal damage, which left him in the dust. Allow me to explain these phenomenons. For those who don't know, before the Girl City update, Hero Wars used to have level 120 cap, and alongside that, the maximum rank for heroes used to be orange +4. Additionally, maximum level of glyphs used to be level 40, and default skins had a maximum level of 40. All these differences led to a very different game compared to now. At maximum stats, Ishmael had 50,899 physical attack stat, 18,170 armor penetration stat and 5,685 base critical hit chance stat, which may not seem like it's much, but back in those days, those were some insane stats to consider. They were the highest offensive stats in the entire game. Due to the sheer strength Ishmael had, he had realistically only 3 tank opponents to worry about: Cleaver, Zeri and Galahad. Cleaver had 612,956 health through stats and an extra 32,800 health from his purple skill, and 17,845 armor. Zeri had 741,628 health, and 18,773 armor. Finally, Galahad had 566,135 health, and 18,888 armor from stats, and an additional 1,050 armor from his then purple ability. Ishmael's armor penetration fully negated Cleaver's armor stat, left Zeri with only 603 armor stat, which approximately reduces 16.74% physical damage taken, and he left Galahad with 1768 armor stat, which approximately reduces 37.09% physical damage taken. Now, let's do some math. Ishmael pierces Cleaver's armor fully, therefore he deals full 50,899 damage to him. Cleaver has 645,736 health. He is capable of surviving 12 hits before going down, 6 hits if all hits are critical hits. Zeri has 741,628 health, and Ishmael deals 42,379 damage to her per hit. She survives 17 hits without going down, 8 hits if all hits are critical hits. Galahad has 566,135 health, and Ishmael deals 32,021 damage to him per hit. He also survives 17 hits without going down, 8 hits if all hits are critical hits. This is how easily Ishmael defeated his toughest adversaries in the old days. If you think this is bad, don't get me started on how easily Ishmael destroyed the likes of Astaroth or Luther. To them, Ishmael dealt such insane damage that he was capable of instantly stunning them whenever he landed a critical hit, and for those who don't know, you can inflict a short-lasting stun on any hero if you deal damage that equals to or exceeds 20% of their maximum health. In those days, whoever's tank fell first in the battle, it meant loss for the team easily in 99% cases, as Ishmael would then wreak havoc upon the enemy team. Indeed, he was quite the force to be reckoned with. Despite his nerf, this offensive pressure was a short-lived glory. However, in 2018, Nexter started seriously buffing previously weak heroes. Astaroth received his infamous barbarian skin on 22nd of February, which boosts his armor, and he was also the first hero to ever be seriously reworked to the form we know him as today on 13th of April. While Astaroth's rework was quite nice, if he hadn't received his barbarian skin, he wouldn't have mattered at all. It was the barbarian skin that truly allowed Astaroth to shine. Astaroth's beyond pathetic armor stat went from 17,420 to the unheard of value of 28,070 armor, which allowed Astaroth to reduce approximately 76.75% of physical damage taken by Ishmael, more than quadrupling his previous performance. Now let's do some math again. Despite the fact that Astaroth had only mediocre 488,660 health at max stats, his enormous armor stat, which reduced Ishmael's physical damage to mere 11,836 damage per hit, made him the single most powerful armor tank in the game at the time. Astaroth could endure as many as 41 hits, or 20 hits if all of Ishmael's hits were critical without dying. This was such a massive durability that Astaroth could endure pretty much the whole fight without dying. Astaroth had a very poor reputation back in the day though, and because of it, not many people were willing to build him up. I was actually one of the first people to realize the incredible potential of Astaroth, and I would often tell people the reality about Astaroth, but nobody listened to me. The only people who really agreed with me, indirectly at least, were the elite players who knew what was up. The earliest known strategic and famous use of Astaroth was by Putitwhere in a guild war against a team that had Ishmael and the then newly introduced K'arkh. I will include the video about that in the description. On 20th of August, Girl City update dropped in game. With that came chapters 14 and 15. Astaroth and Lucas were added into the game. The maximum level was increased to level 130, and with that, maximum rank was increased to Red +2. Why does this matter? Well, the raise of levels and ranks brought a certain imbalance of two items into the game. The items in question are Insatiable Wing Aegis and Droma's Fancy. The problematic relationship between these two items is the fact that it requires two Droma's Fancies to defeat one single Insatiable Wing Aegis. No physical hero gets more than two Droma's Fancies, and there are several tanks who get two Insatiable Wing Aegises, meaning they get easy free 1920 armor against physical attackers. This not only adversely affected Ishmael, but also practically every other physical damage dealer in the game. In addition to that, they also increased the maximum level of glyphs and skins shortly after in September, but those things didn't favor any side in particular. The only other thing that could have made a difference was the planned increase of maximum level of hero artifacts. Because Alchemist Folio provides more armor penetration than Defender's Covenant provides armor, but the raise of hero artifacts was scrapped for unknown reasons, leaving our physical heroes screwed. Now, let me bring you up to speed how much the landscape changed after all those updates. Ishmael's maximum physical attack stat rose to 69,350. His armor penetration stat rose to 24,430 and his critical hit chance stat rose to 7,848. What about his mortal enemies? Cleaver's maximum health stat rose to 837,668, plus he also received additional 36,800 health from his purple ability. His armor rose to 25,369. Zeri's maximum health stat rose to 957,220, and her armor rose to 27,467. Cleaver could now score 939 armor against Ishmael, which amounts to 23.84% reduction of incoming physical damage. Zeri scored 3,037 armor against Ishmael, which reduces physical damage taken by 50.31%. Astaroth has only one Insatiable Wing Aegis, so it's pointless to talk about him, although the gap between his armor and Ishmael's armor penetration also slightly increased due to start per level mechanics. A more drastic change happened with Luther. Luther in the old cap was practically helpless against Ishmael. How do you think he fared after Girl City update? Luther ended up with 704,542 health stat and 27,418 armor stat at maximum stats. This allowed him to keep 2,988 armor against Ishmael, which reduces upcoming physical damage by 49.9%, nearly doubling Luther's implied survivability. Yeah, that's right, the tank who previously groveled in fear in front of Ishmael actually punked him now. That's how drastic the situation became for Ishmael. Let's do some math again. Cleaver has 874,468 health, takes 52,817 damage per hit from Ishmael. He survives 16 hits without dying, or 8 hits if all hits are critical hits. Zeri has 957,220 health, takes 34,462 damage per hit from Ishmael. She survives 27 hits without dying, or 13 hits if all hits are critical hits. Luther has 704,542 health, takes 34,744 damage per hit from Ishmael. He survives 20 hits without dying, or 10 if all hits are critical hits. Quite the drastic change. I know you hate to see it. If you are wondering how king of physical durability amongst tanks at the time, Astaroth, fared against Ishmael, he had 697,420 health and 34,874 armor, which allowed him to keep hefty 10,444 armor start against Ishmael, which reduced all of the damage suffered by 77.69%. Ishmael deals 15,472 damage to him per hit, which means Astaroth survives 45 hits from Ishmael without dying, or 22 if all hits are critical. Overall, not a very drastic change from the old meta, but it's still some extra hits. The downfall of Ishmael didn't end there. On 27th of September, Next is released an angelic skin for Luther, which increased his armor stat. On 13th of February in 2019, Next is released a romantic skin for Galahad, which increased his armor, and they also reworked him to his current form. On 29th of March in 2019, Next is released a masquerade skin for Cleaver, which increased his armor stat. On 28th of October in 2019, Next is released a devil skin for Zeri, which increased her armor stat. And finally on 27th of December in 2019, Next is released a winter skin for Lilith, which increased her armor stat. What all of these tanks have in common is the fact that they all score well over 30,000 armor stat, ranging from around 33,000 to a bit over 38,000. I don't think I need to include any extra calculations to describe how pathetic Ishmael's offense is to that. All I can say is that with most of them, it's an even worse situation than how Astaroth negates Ishmael. There is also Chaba, who received his armor-boosting winter skin in 2017, making him the first tank to ever receive an armor skin. Chaba didn't become revolutionary in the days of old meta due to the high expenses for his effectiveness. Even today, the use of Chaba is somewhat dubious, but if you do wish to use him, he too completely decimates Ishmael's armor penetration stat. Ishmael's last ray of hope was an armor penetration boosting skin, but Next is extinguished that hope in the same update that introduced Cleaver's masquerade skin, as they gave Ishmael a health boosting skin instead. While a health skin is good for Ishmael, it doesn't solve the problem of Ishmael doing practically no damage to his biggest enemies, and because of this, he fell out of grace and most Ishmael users lost hope for redemption. Ishmael mains have attempted numerous attempts to revive his viability, such as through the use of armor penetration boosting heroes like Qingmao or Elma, and although some of these attempts were successful, most have dropped Ishmael entirely or relegated him to a grand arena filler for the simple reason that Ishmael's spot in a team could be utilized much better by swapping him with a better hero. The last time Ishmael was regarded by most of the community as popular and powerful was at the end of November and beginning of December in 2018 during a battle challenge. The community had to assemble a team of heroes based on options and votes, and Ishmael won the votes by far. After the full squad had been formed, Next is released a video where they tested our assembled team against the challenger team. For most of the players, it was probably the biggest reality check in history of Hero Wars. It was no surprise that in the video, Ishmael died within seconds in every round. The deaths of Ishmael in the video were a symbolism for Ishmael's hype dying completely afterwards, as almost nobody talked about Ishmael in high regard anymore. Ironically enough, that same video inspired me to become a Jew main, because Jew is hard carrying our bad Facebook team and it was obvious that Jew still had some potential even in the heavy tanking meta. I will also include this video in the description. That about sums up Ishmael's sad tale of becoming one of the weakest heroes in all of Hero Wars. As of now, Ishmael's situation is still looking grim. Pets make it even harder for Ishmael to thrive once again, because Oliver patronage on tanks counters Fenris patronage quite hard, and Fenris patronage was really the only hope for Ishmael's damage to shine once again. It doesn't help that even some non-tank heroes, such as Arachne, Marcus and Sartor give Ishmael such hard time as well. Quite sad, considering a strong Ishmael and Guild Wars meant business long time ago. And if by some chance you managed to charge up enemy Ishmael and failed to kill him in a Guild War attack, you would be advised to completely avoid hitting that same station again, as it was very likely that a charged up Ishmael would mop the floor with your team without sustaining any lasting damage thanks to his great damage and recovery and vampirism, and thus neutralizing your attack completely. Nowadays, Ishmael and Guild War defense teams is seen as a harmless free kill for the most part, at least in the end game, because Ishmael just does negligible damage to heavy tanks. Another very paradoxical thing is how Astaroth went from being the worst tank in the game to being considered the very best tank in the game by many. Astaroth has definitely experienced one of the biggest buffs in the existence. Last thing before this video ends, Ishmael's ancient nerf is definitely not responsible for his poor viability today, and even if they reverse the nerf, it wouldn't do anything for Ishmael due to his lackluster damage on hard targets. He'd still be easily killable all the same. If there's anything that needs to be done about Ishmael, he needs to have his armor penetration stat increased greatly and naturally, so he can actually pose a threat, and not be seen as a harmless free kill. Ishmael is the very epitome of why stats on tanks matter. If anyone ever tells you that they don't matter at all and that only abilities matter, tell them that Ishmael would like to have a word with them. That's the history lesson that must never be forgotten. That's all for today's video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in another video.